With the United States now acquiring all of this territory and stretching from coast to coast, the issue of slavery really became something that took the forefront. It became more of a problem because now, as new territories began to apply for statehood, this whole idea of trying to keep a balance in Congress between free states and slave states really became a problem. And so, one of the congressional representatives, David Wilmot of Pennsylvania, decided to propose what's known as the Wilmot Proviso, right? And a proviso is part of a law that restricts something. And in this case, right, David Wilmot decided that all of that territory that was acquired through the Mexican cession after the Mexican American War, that whole new territory would be prohibited from having slavery, right? So all of these new lands would not be slave states at all. However, that proviso only passed in the House, but it was denied in the Senate. So that never really became law, and there was no way of preventing slavery within these new territories. Because of this, the election of 1848 had the introduction of a new political party because neither the Democrats or the Whigs took a clear stand on the issue of slavery. And because of that, a new party was formed for this particular election. The Whigs then nominated as their candidate Zachary Taylor. Remember, he is the war veteran from the Mexican American War. The Democrats chose Lewis Cass. And then this new party, which was known as the Free Soil Party, and this was a party that was formed by abolitionists, decided to select ex-president Martin Van Buren. Right, so this was the candidates of the election of 1848. In the end, it was Zachary Taylor who became the winner of the election and became the new president. During this time, we are still debating this issue of slavery. And so the Compromise of 1850, which was proposed by Henry Clay, and he's also the one who proposed the Missouri Compromise. So in Congress, he's always been very influential in trying to kind of come with a way for both sides to come together. So with the Compromise of 1850, there were a number of edicts that went along with it. So, for example, California would be admitted as a free state. Texas would give up a portion of land in the north in exchange for the U.S. government to pay off all of the war debt that it had from its revolution against Mexico. Popular sovereignty, remember, which is the power of the people, authority of the people, right? Popular sovereignty would decide the positions on slavery in new territory, meaning that new territories, when they applied for statehood, would also hold their own elections, and the people within the territory would decide for themselves whether or not they would be a slave state or a free state. The slave trade, but not slavery itself, would be banned in Washington, D.C., and finally, Congress would pass stronger laws to return runaway slaves to the South, which would become what we refer to as the Fugitive Slave Act. So this was the Compromise of 1850. Now, Zachary Taylor actually died suddenly in office while he was elected president, and his vice president, Millard Fillmore, becomes the new president. And it's under Fillmore that the Compromise of 1850 is actually signed into law, and these things now pass. So along with that, we also have the execution of the Fugitive Slave Act, which meant that Northern citizens were required now to cooperate with slave catchers who were trying to return runaway slaves back to their masters in the South. Because of the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act, a lot of free blacks fled from the United States into Canada, fearing that they would be taken by force and returned to the South and made slaves once again. Many abolitionists then, in protest of the Fugitive Slave Act, began to practice civil disobedience and did not follow the law. Remember, civil disobedience is this idea, if you remember from one of your ed puzzles, it was first proposed in an essay that was written by Henry David Thoreau. Right, he refused to pay his taxes when he was protesting the Mexican-American War. And Thoreau said that people could refuse to follow the laws as a civil disobedience if they are trying to protest something that they feel is unjust. And so abolitionists who felt that slavery was unjust and the passing of the Fugitive Slave Act being unjust decided to not follow the law. In the fact, some northern states actually passed what was called personal liberty laws, which actually negated the Fugitive Slave Act. And a lot of the Southerners saw this as proof that the North did not really take the Fugitive Slave Act seriously and was not in any position to try and enforce the law, further separating the division between the North and the South through that. Something else that added to this division between the North and the South was Harriet Beecher Stowe. Right, she becomes a very well-known abolitionist. She's from Massachusetts, and she wrote Uncle Tom's Cabin, which really was a story based on the very harsh realities of what slave life was like in the South. And it really becomes one of the most influential novels of the century, and that really further divided the nation even more.